everyone, welcome to the Ask Podcast. My name is Justin, and today we're joined with Alice.
Hey guys.
So Alice is a physio for the Sydney Kings, so she's been helping me this season with a lot of stuff, so a lot of questions that I ask, kind of walking me through what goes on in a pro sports team. So yeah, Alice, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Thanks for taking the time.
No problems.
I think the best way to start off this podcast is a little bit of an icebreaker for the people.
Okay, for the people.
For the people.
All right, let's do it.
2 truths and 1 lie about yourself.
Okay, and you have to pick the lie.
And I have to pick the lie.
All right. I used to work as a swimming teacher.
Okay.
So that's 1. Number 2, I can speak French.
Okay.
And number 3, I had to learn line dancing at my primary school.
What dancing?
Line dancing.
I don't even know what that is.
You know what country music is?
Like Australian country music?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like the type of dancing you do to country music.
Okay.
Maybe it's an Australian thing.
I'm gonna go with the swimming one. That's a lie.
It's the lie. No, that's the truth.
That's the truth?
Yeah.
Okay.
50-50 now.
I feel like you speak French.
I don't
You
speak
don't
French.
speak French?
I speak incredibly poor French.
Do you have any French background in you?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. I don't
British, Scottish.
Yeah. Okay.
No French.
I do, actually, now I think about it.
Sounds very exotic. I wish I did.
I think, yeah, you talk about the World Cup and everything, so I should have known you had an English background more so than anything, French.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No French. Definitely British.
Okay. Well, I'm 0 for 2 in this game now, so I couldn't get
solid
Simons.
start. You couldn't get Simons either.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get a bit into your history in physiotherapy.
Yep.
How'd you get started?
So I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was in high school. I think I went through the motions, didn't really have anything that grabbed at me beyond sport and PDHPE. And then ended up taking a year off and then kind of looked at a few degrees and ended up landing on health science, which kind of just broadly did a lot of the same subjects as like sports science, physios, undergrad, that sort of thing, but then had some other broader health-based subjects. And within that, I played a lot of sport when I was younger and I constantly had ankle injuries. So had been to physios before and I was like, oh, that seems like a cool thing to do. To try to help people in that way, so I ended up going through a Masters of Physio after my undergrad. So that's how I landed in physio.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're obviously working with the Sydney Kings, but I remember you talking about lots of different other sports teams you were working with in the past.
Yeah.
So could you kind of walk us through what your career has looked like so far?
So I finished 8 or 9 years ago now, so a little while. I went straight into private practice. So I've always worked in private clinics, pretty sports-based clinics. I didn't go the hospital route. It just wasn't for me, and I knew that. So straight in private practice and sport. And from the start, I started out working in rugby union. So I spent 4 years working with a team in the Shoot Shield competition, which is a Sydney-based club competition. It's a great ground to learn skills really quickly. In rugby, you see a lot of injuries, and you have to learn how to deal with them really quickly. And then at the same time, I started working in netball. So the New South Wales netball high performance pathway of like the underage, like under 17s, under 19s state teams. So between that and then over that time as well, so I worked in netball since I started up until very recently. Over that time, I've worked with there's a few Premier League sides. So again, club-based stuff that we work with through clinic here.
Okay.
So yeah, mostly rugby union and netball, and up until recently, now basketball. Yeah.
So you mentioned the clinic that we're in right now. So we're in zone 34.
Yeah.
What is zone 34?
So we are a sports physio clinic based in the inner west of Sydney. We see private patients, we see sports patients. Our clinic, we look after the Sydney Kings, so that's kind of how we're linked in here. And we look after a few other, we look after UTS basketball, we look after UTS Randwick Sparks, and then have some ties to other clubs here and there as well. Yeah.
Okay. So is it just a sports demographic that you look after?
No, like general population. I think it's funny, a lot of our patients will come in and be like, I didn't think I could come to a sports clinic because I don't do sport, but we'll see anyone from like young kids all the way to 90-year-olds who are managing osteoarthritis. Like, we'll see anything in here, and we don't always see, it might not always be musculoskeletal based, it might be like a lot of our exercise physiologists might deal with people that have had like brain injuries and such. And so we see a big range. It's largely sports and musculoskeletal, like 95%, but you do see the occasional different one.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, all walks of life, not just sport.
Obviously, you've got heaps of experience in sports. Mm-hmm. So, touching on some of the career advice now, if you had one or two pieces of advice for people wanting to be a sports physio, what would it be?
I think one of the biggest things we see in young physios, and I love this, is that you're super keen to work in the sport that you love. Like, and I was probably the same. Like, I grew up playing netball, so I was like, I want to work in netball. But I think one of the best things for me when I was a young physio was getting a broad range of experience in sports that I didn't know much about or I hadn't had exposure to before, because it broadens your skill set, it broadens your knowledge, and you learn how to deal with a lot of things that you wouldn't otherwise see. So I think getting a broad range, not just sticking to what you want, but going, like, having an open mind, going, okay, well, I want to work in basketball, but maybe if I get this opportunity in AFL, I'm going to do that because that's going to help teach me about other things. And you can always bring that back into, you know, your future goal if that's where you want to go. Yeah. And even, I think you can have a really singular focus in on, I want to work in sport, but you've got to go through all of these like placements in uni that aren't sports based at all, they're hospital based, but you gain skills there that can be transferable into a sports environment, like working in a team or communication, or even just like basic assessment that you can then bring back in. Like, I think it's good to keep an open mind about things that don't seem applicable but always come back and help.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good advice. What about one or two pieces of information that people should be wary of before kind of signing themselves up for sport?
I reckon a big one is just like going in with eyes open, knowing that sport means you're going to be working weekends and you're going to be working some odd hours. So if you're wanting a job that's the pretty 8:30 till 5 Monday to Friday, then sport's not going to be for you. You've got to be willing to put aside probably what would be normally your free time to then do that. And I think that's probably like the biggest thing. You've got to find a balance somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. You just talked about the balance part.
Yeah.
So burnout is such like an intense topic in physio, just because we know the stats of physios burning out before they're like 30, let alone the sports physios who work insane hours, odd hours. Have you had any experience with burnout?
Yeah, so perhaps 3 or 4 years ago, was working with 2 or 3 netball squads. I was working in rugby. I was partway through studying my Masters of Sports Physio as well, and I was working full time. I was just burning the candle at both ends, and I wasn't enjoying myself. And there was a few other things going on within my personal life that I ended up quitting my jobs at the time, and I took 3 months off. And within that time, like, I spent a bit of time traveling and doing lots of cool things, but within that time, I really was grappling with, do I want to continue in physio? Is this the kind of lifestyle that I wanted? Because I didn't have a balance. For like 4 or 5 years, I worked every single weekend. And that, at the time, I was like, this is cool, I can go and do everything. And then it just ground down gradually. And I couldn't do it anymore. And I think having the time off was the best decision I could make, because I came back going, I had a fresh perspective of, I love doing this because I get to help people achieve what they want to achieve. And I had a better perspective on, okay, well, if I am wanting to work in sport, which I still did, I need to figure out how that's going to look in the broader picture of my life, and like how I can balance that better for myself, so I can manage it longer term, be healthy in other ways, and not tank myself into the ground again.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's brutal.
Are you happy sharing kind of some of the balance there that you were talking about?
How I balance it?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm very lucky that I have very supportive people around me. When I came back off that 3-month hiatus, that's when I started here at Zone. So I'm very lucky that our boss, Dave, he is super supportive, and I think with all of us here, the way we kind of work it is we balance it between clinic and sport. And part of the beauty of where I am with Kings is that because I've got Dave within both those spheres, I don't have a boss pulling me two different directions. And so that's often the case if you're working lots of different jobs, is it's really hard to find that balance. But I think having an open dialogue is really important. And then for me, I'm very organised with like a calendar, so I'll have everything scheduled in of like, for me, when I'm going to exercise, because that helps me enormously. When I'm working, when can I fit in seeing a friend that's not physio related? Like, when can I fit in, for me, going to the beach? I love the beach. And so for me, if I'm looking at my calendar going, okay, well, the next 2 weeks are going to be crazy, then I'm going to block myself some time off after that to give myself some time. Or if I'm traveling with the Kings, for example, I'll always go out for a morning walk because it's your own space. And so you can always find time. It's just you got to be very organised about it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
As a young, like up-and-coming physio, if you think back to, I don't know, when you were in my stage,
Yeah.
a lot of times we are stuck in kind of this limbo where we're just trying to do everything and anything that we can do.
Yeah.
And I've been asked about burnout before, and my answer was always, I haven't felt it,
Yeah.
mainly because of just this constant curiosity. But I know that at this rate that I'm going, I feel like a burnout at some point in the future is inevitable.
Yeah.
But it's not just me, it's like all these students who are in this exact same position are in the same experience. Are you able to relate to that experience? And do you have any advice, if you looked back on yourself, what would you do differently, if anything?
I think, like when I was a student, I did do things outside of my degree to further my knowledge. And I think, like, I love that you and like the other interns we have at King's and some young physios are doing that, because if you just go through a physio degree, I don't feel like, well, I certainly didn't feel like I was prepared enough to actually work. I didn't feel like I had the knowledge, and so I utilised everyone I had around me to kind of build my base. But I think looking back, I probably wasn't very good at saying no to things, and I didn't know what my limit was. And so I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. I don't know if that answers your question very well. I think it's more just, you've got to give yourself time away from things sometimes to then come back into them fresh. It doesn't need to be like, not everyone's going to need 3 months off. I hope no one else does. But it's more just going, factor in time for yourself and doing something that you enjoy, and whatever that is, like having an outlet that's not just this one thing, I think is really important. Yeah.
I've got friends who have just graduated, like, not even like 3 months out, and they burnt out.
Yeah, that's brutal.
And now they're not working in physio anymore. 3 months out.
Actually, I've got good advice on that I probably could have said. I was going to say, like, getting a job in a place that commits to teaching you as a new grad is enormous.
Okay.
Because so often, particularly if you're wanting to work privately, you can get jobs in places that'll give you like a clinical load, but then they'll just kind of drop you in it and leave you. And as a new grad, like the mental fatigue it takes as a new grad, like I remember the first week I worked, I fell asleep at 7 p.m. on the Friday night because I was so tired, because my brain was just going the entire week because I was learning so much and there was so much coming at me. And that continued for like 3 months, before I kind of like had my head around a few more things. But if you just get dropped in a clinical load, like, and not taught anything and not supported and not like, hey, let's learn something each week, let's go through case studies, and like some dedicated time for that. You hate it, because you're like, you constantly feel like you don't know anything and you don't know what to do. And like, I think having a structured program or something within a contract that's like, have teaching hours each week with a senior physio. So important. Because you have so many questions. If no one's there to answer them, then you're like, well, what do I do? And you just tank.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's happened to a bunch of my friends as well.
Yeah.
They just got jobs in places that didn't work out. But yeah.
Do you have 1 or 2 pieces of new research that you would be happy to share?
I find, yes, I find that particularly when you're working very, very long hours and crazy hours, I find keeping up with new research can be really difficult as a physio. And I think there's like stats on it of like most physios can't keep up. There's that many, like thousands of articles being produced each year and people can't keep up with what's coming through. So I'm at the stage at the moment where I haven't been keeping up, and like that's honest from me. But I'm very lucky that like in Zone 34, for example, we have weekly in-services where we share around who presents and you pick what you want to present on your like research and your Google. And so we get other people teaching us things from recent research if we haven't got the time for it, or I will listen to like physio podcasts in the car because that's when I often have dead time, or like that's how I've been doing my professional development more so rather than sitting down and reading research articles more recently.
Yeah.
I should get back into it. I wasn't a big phase of it during my sports masters, but since then I had a little rest from the journals.
Yeah, I think it's hard because analyzing a whole journal takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right. So it makes sense if you're working full time. I don't know how you would be able to do that.
And again, I think that's the beauty of working in a clinic, that everyone wants to continue learning because you can help each other rather than being by yourself and being like, I need to keep up with this and this and this and this and this. Yeah, it's way easier when you have group around you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What about something that you've learned kind of clinically that uni hasn't been able to teach you?
I think with uni, and I think they go through a lot of like, this is best practice by research, which is great because you learn all of the research coming through and you're going, okay, well for low back pain you need to do this and this and this and this, or for this like patellofemoral pain you need, like this is what research says you should be doing X, Y, Z. But then when you come into clinic and in reality you might not have the resources to do what best practice might be, or you don't have the time to go through all of that, or the patient can't get through all of that, and so you then need to adapt in. And it's like best practice, they talk about this pyramid of like, you've got your evidence base, but then you've got your clinical experience, which obviously grows as you go through your career, and you can marry the two in between.
And patient preference.
And patient preference as well. And then you've got to find somewhere in between, because the patient might not want to do 20 exercises for their knee, like research says, and they might just want a massage, but then you've got to go, okay, well, I know that massage is not going to help this long term, and what is going to help it is an exercise-based program longer term, but you've got to find that middle point. And I think that comes with marrying the two together rather than going fully one way or fully another. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think you don't learn that balance at uni.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes with time.
Fair. Experience teaches it, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. What about like a fun fact or statistic about the human body in an injury context?
Can I tweak it slightly to not be injury in human body, but definitely physio based? Or physio medical based. One of my favourite stats, I guess. There was a research paper done. It was on doctors, but I think you can apply the results to other health professions such as physio. So they looked at consultations with doctors with patients, and they found that on average a patient will get interrupted every 11 seconds in a consultation. And so sometimes the patient got interrupted within 1 second, other times it might have been a few minutes, depending on who they were looking at. So it's qualitative research. But I think that's one of the things that I've gotten a lot more aware of and a lot better at with more experience, was when I first came out of uni and I had a new patient in front of me, I'd have this checklist in my brain of things that I wanted to tick off. Okay, well, what's the history? What are the aggravating factors? What's easing? What's it like at night? What's it like in the morning? What's your past history? What do they do for work? What do they do for exercise? Like, do they have any other health conditions? I want to tick all of that off, and the patients don't come in and tell their history in a beautiful way like that. They come in and they might go, like, 5 years ago I had this, and then this happened, and then they're jumping around, and then it kind of hurts when I do this, but then this happened, and then, oh, this is also going on, and I'm trying to do this. And I would try and interrupt to try and put it into this like beautiful checkbox list, because that's how my new grad brain worked. But it meant that I interrupted my patient every single time. And the more experience I've gotten, the more comfortable, I'm quite comfortable now with patients jump all over the place, and I'm like, that's cool. And I can bring all that information back in together. But I often find you get so much more information out of someone if you just shut up and let them talk. Because people just offer things, or you can ask open questions and then they start talking again. And you get a lot more information rather than jumping in all the time.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty poor start from some health professionals' perspective.
I think that's very relatable. Listening to that, I'm just coming off of placements. And so I got the opportunity to, do a few initials, see some new patients. And exactly what you said, there's this massive checklist in my head, and it's like, I want to hear this, and this order too. And so I think, just letting them talk is a good way to kind of just let them feel heard. But also they say most of the stuff that you want to hear anyway, just not in that order. But I think the question I have for you is, how do you make sure it's still time efficient if you just let them talk?
I think it often depends on the patient. Like some patients, if they really start going off on tangents that aren't going to be giving you valuable information at that time, I will interrupt and rein them in a little bit and go, okay, well, what about this? But I try not to do that too much. And I think, like you said, people want to feel heard. They're coming in here with pain or with an injury, and that's going to be affecting them in lots of different ways. And I think part of that is like in their life, they might not be able to talk about that very well to anybody else, or they might not have the opportunity to discuss that because they don't feel like they can whinge to their husband or, talk to their partner about it or whatever it is. And so I would rather spend, say an initial consultation is 45 minutes, I'd rather spend 35 minutes of that talking and getting their ideas and going, okay, well, cool, like we've got this amount of time to get a bit of assessment done and we can figure out a plan, and then next time they come in, I can look at all these other things that I would like to look at. I think I used to fall trap to trying to get everything done in one session because I was like, okay, well, I need to get history, I need to do objective, I need to diagnose, I need to treat, and then I need to give them a plan. I'm like, if I don't get through that, I don't get through that. But I've heard what they want to say, and often that goes much further.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. A bit easing to hear that, actually.
Yeah, you don't have to get through everything.
Yeah.
If you don't, that's fine. And patients don't mind that. If you're like, cool, well, next time you come in, we're going to go through this and this and this. We're going to have a look at this.
Yeah.
And then we'll create a plan for this.
Okay.
You don't have to tick everything off in one session. Yeah.
Okay, so I've touched on force plates with Tobes in a previous episode.
Yep.
And so he's touched on how he uses it in a training context. How do you use force plates? And I see in the clinic we've got dynamometers. How do you use that in a rehab context?
Yeah. So we're very lucky at Zone that we have force plates, and we have two different types of dynamometers, one that you push on and one that you pull on. So essentially you can measure the amount of force someone can produce with a certain movement. So it's probably easiest to explain in a context of like a case nearly. For example, I had a patient today who is 7 weeks post ACL and MCL injury. And he has just come out of his range of motion brace for the MCL. And he's aiming to do a non-operative management for his ACL injury. That's what he wants to try. So he's going to try the 3 months of, intensive physio to try and build back his strength. And so we're now at the start of that 3 months going, okay, well, we need some baseline measures of what's your strength today. We know it's not going to be great. You can see straight away his leg is not as strong as the other side. It's lost muscle because it's been in a brace. And so, but we can look at it and go, okay, well, let's test your quad strength. Let's test your hamstring strength. We get baseline measures of going, okay, well, for example, his hamstring strength, I can't remember the exact numbers, might have been 30 to 40% different to his other side. And so we can then use that as a guide of going, okay, well, cool, we know that this is where you're at now. We need to provide a strengthening program that we can gradually progress. and then go, okay, well, we might retest we know it takes physiologically 4 to 6 weeks to build or get changes in muscle with good programming. And so we go, okay, well, we might test that again in 4 to 6 weeks. And then where's he at? And it's really motivating for patients to go, oh, like I was 40% weaker and now I'm only 25% weaker. Like I've gotten so much stronger, and you can see the progress, and that helps them in terms of they get to see how they're going, and it can motivate them, and you can give them targets going, okay, well, next time we test, I want you to be hitting this number, or we know that you need to be within this kind of range as a percentage of your body weight to have good function with this particular injury, or whatever it is. And when it comes to later stage stuff, say for example, like later stage ACL rehab, we can do jump tests, we can do hop tests, we can do pretty much anything that our imagination can think up on a set of force plates. We can test out any strength that we want to, providing we can create a setup out there and provide objective numbers for us to go, hey, okay, well, you might think you're ready for sport, but we know that your hop test is not, within the certain parameters that we would like it to be to return you to sport, or we can look at X, Y, Z. Yeah. I think it doesn't take away from other hop tests, for example, with the force plates particularly, like you still want to look at linear hop tests, that sort of thing, but it's a nice adjunct that we can add in, and patients also really like having the technology and the numbers and seeing how things are going, rather than just a subjective, I'll push against my hand or it feels a bit weak, but there's no way you can tell exactly how weak that is. Mm-hmm. But we have the technology too. That's cool. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we use it every single day in here. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you also be happy to show us how the dynamometer works?
Yeah, easy.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we're here on the plinth. I'm in a really weird position, but we're going to be using some of the dynamometers to do some testing. So we'll see the results and how Alice would use these results, say, if she was rehabbing someone.
Perfect. So we're going to test JT's hamstrings. So we're going to have him in a prone position. We're going to test at roughly 30 degrees knee flexion. Do you know why? Out of interest?
Are you favoring a certain muscle in that position? Like one of the hamstrings in particular?
No, not specifically. You could argue that, but I am putting you in this position because at about 30 degrees knee extension is when you've got that late swing phase, so your hamstrings are working really hard eccentrically, and then need to switch into concentric when you move into a stance phase of running and high speed running. And so 30 degrees knee flexion is often the position that hamstrings will injure in. Okay. In the phase of running. Yeah. And sprinting. Yep. So I'm going to have JT here. Now, what I'm going to get you to do is probably need to hold on to the bed. That's the way. I'm going to have this here against your ankle, and you're going to start to pull up towards your bum. I'm going to resist you. Okay, so we're going to do hold for a couple of seconds and then relax. We're going to do 3 tests on one side, then 3 tests on the other. Okay. Okay, so we're going to be here. You ready to go, JT? Yep. 3, 2, 1, off you go. Pull, 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 and rest. Good. All right, so 18's your number to beat this time, JT. 3, 2, 1, off you go. Go, 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 and rest. Good. And then one more, whenever you're ready. Pull, 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 and rest. All right, so you can hit stop left there. And then hit start right. So you can see in real time exactly how we're testing. So same thing on this side. 3, 2, 1, off you go. Pull, pull, and rest. Good. Damn. And whenever you're ready, mate, off you go. Go, 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 and rest. And then last one, off you go. Pull, 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 and rest. Good.
Consistent.
Right. Hit stop. So what this will now do is it'll tell you an average of your peak force that you produced on the left versus the right. It'll calculate whether there's a difference side to side. And then if we scroll down, you can see what that is as a percentage of your body weight, which we plugged into the system earlier, and then what the targets should be based on normative data that's built into this app. So then if we were to give Justin a strength program for his hamstrings, we could come back in, say, 4 to 6 weeks and retest, and hopefully the difference is less.
Yep. Is this discrepancy big?
Usually we like it within 10%. 16's, I mean, it's not horrible, but it's not quite where we want it to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. That was awesome. Thanks, Alice. A second question that I had was kind of your take on acute swelling management. So this whole thing with ice and no ice.
Yeah.
Where do you sit on that?
It's a really interesting debate going on in the physio world at the moment. I think some people really sit on one end and some people really sit on the other. And I think that because swelling is a part of the inflammatory cycle that brings healing to the tissues. So you need that inflammation, and part of that is swelling. But on the flip side of that, we know that, say, if you have someone that rolls their ankle and it blows up like a balloon and their foot blows up and it's not going to be, it takes a long time to settle that back down. And that's going to slow down your progress to get them back to what they want to do. I think you can control swelling, but you don't necessarily want to stop it entirely. Like, swelling is going to be a useful part of healing.
Yeah.
But if it's blowing up like a balloon, you don't need that much swelling. And so I will always, if someone rolls their ankle at sport, throw some ice on it. You're still naturally going to get the healing process, and you're not going to stop that. That's still going to happen. It's a physiological thing. Ice doesn't stop it.
Yeah.
But I think if you can control and manage the swelling, that's going to help you get them back a bit quicker.
In my head, I know this is going to be a very difficult question, but how much is too much?
How long's a piece of string? I wish I could be like, oh, you should have this much. There's no specific. It's a bit of an art. Yeah.
Blood flow restriction is something I came across the other day just on Instagram, and I know minimally about it. I know it's a way you can use it as a way to hypertrophize a muscle if you can't put it through too much load. Is that understanding correct, or is there how else would you use blood flow restrictive in a physio context? Yeah,
so that broadly is correct. So we have blood flow cuffs here as well. I didn't show you those before.
Okay.
So broadly correct concept. The idea of blood flow restriction is you're essentially putting a cuff. So say, for example, it's a lower limb injury. You're putting a cuff quite high up to reduce, and then working the muscle to reduce, and it reduces venous blood flow out of the muscle. So the lactate levels in the muscle build up, and with that brings more growth hormones to the body, or to the muscle rather. Yeah. And so, like you said, it means that you can work at 30% of a rep max, but get gains of hypertrophy that usually you need to work at, say, 70% of a rep max to get. So it's super useful, say, for example, post-operatively, people who really struggle to get their quad strength back up. You might want to try blood flow restriction, work them at a lighter weight with there's certain prescribed sets and reps and rest times within it. Work them at a lighter weight and you can get gains from that. The difficulty with blood flow restriction is to get gains. What the research kind of says is you need to be doing it 2 or 3 times a week. So you need to be doing it regularly for, say, 6 weeks, I think, would be a classic strength or hypertrophy training program. And not everyone has access to blood flow restriction cuffs 3 times a week for 6 weeks. And so it's not the most user-friendly in that sense. And so I've seen, you can really work someone, but if you just do it once, are you really going to get the gains? It's like doing a workout once and hoping you're fitter. Yeah. You've got to be consistent. Yeah.
Okay. And do people feel the DOMS?
Oh, yeah.
It's still it's like you've used, I don't know, 7% of your rep max.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to do blood flow restriction training in the sense of it hurts. It's like a proper muscle burn, but they might be doing a leg extension at 5 kilos. Because the venous return is reduced, you get that limb changing colour. Their leg feels like really sort of tighter, nearly. Like they can feel that muscle just feels like super, like, you know, when you're working really hard and you're like, oh, that really burns. They can feel that lactate. It feels like a workout, but you're working them at a lower. Should probably also mention there's lots of contraindications and precautions to blood flow restriction. There's like medical screenings where like the blood flow restriction we have has an app that has a screening that patients have to like go through and like double check that they are safe to do it.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.